Yeah. A well-deserved round of applause for our speakers, but also for the members of the audience who joined us. So big round of applause also for them. The secret of this forum and all the other events that we are really privileged to do is the passion that you see. We are standing with Claude outside of the frame and we are showing like we have to move on. But housing is a real passion for us and we could just go on. And we would like this forum to go on forever. But the sad but also happy story is that we are moving towards the end. We still have some great things for you. So the happy event that we are moving towards to is the closing speech. And I am going to invite to the stage Laura Colini, lecturer in urban studies at the University of Venice. And she has been working as senior advisor for the EU urban programs such as URBACT and Urban Innovative Action since 2004. We will have 15 minutes to talk about housing in Europe and the highlights of the last 2 days. Laura, please join us on stage.
Okay. Does it work? Hello and hi everyone, and thank you very much for having me here. Thank you very much also to the organizer, Anna, Christina, Georgi, Yuri, and all the others. So I'm the last speaker here, so I feel that I need to thank all of you for having me here. And it's the first time that I'm joining Habitat for Humanity, this very rich environment. And I'm an urbanist, so I'm really not among the ones that know everything about housing, but I've been working for European programs for 20 years. And so my speech today is really to link some of the things that have been said in the last days to the ideas of how do we get better cities, more just, more sustainable, and whatever you want to have in wonderful lives in cities. So this is where is the fantastic thing that nobody likes? Okay, that's it. So it was not intended to have the same title as the speaker before of the EIB, but that's the same idea. So to connect our discussion with what cities and urban policies have to do in Europe. So I work for URBACT. URBACT is a program that is extremely old, I would say, in the panorama of Europe. And our goal is to support institutional capacity, to do capacity building. A lot have been said, like keywords at the beginning was, how do we make governments accountable? But the idea is, how are we sure that the cities and cities administration know what they are doing? The process that we have within URBACT is to say, okay, municipalities are accountable, but citizens are accountable too. So we create what we call URBACT support group. So the idea is that whenever we support cities to create strategies and plan or transfer practices, they have to create a consultancy group, a sort of participatory group working with them. So the answer before about the community, how do we deal with that? So we have a process which is called URBACT methodology to teach somehow to a certain way, teach not as a professor, but teach in peers, among cities, and how to create ongoing dialogue for co-designing practices, which have to be critically responding to questions of the context where they are working. It is not new, and I wanted to show this. This is a research done by the Joint Research Center looking at how urban policies have been changing over the years. And what is interesting here, at least for me, is that the first work that you see the European Commission directly working with cities, it was with a neighborhood perspective. And it started like at the end of the 90s with urban pilot project, Urban 1 and Urban 2. And funny enough, we talked about the private neighborhood at that time. And the private neighborhood, and obviously housing was at the core of the question. But we didn't have exactly at least the urban policies, focus on housing. Now, I mean, we said today, the other days, we need to look at the building, at the district, at the neighborhood. Housing Europe was talking before about the district. How does we embedded into that? So, but that time, in this period of time, when the urban policies were coming to life, we didn't have exactly a focus on housing. But we had the starting of our program, the one of the exchange among cities here in 2002, which is still ongoing. The way we work, as I said, we not only focus on housing, we work on mobility. We have network working on gender, network working on mobility, I said, or whatever, how to reuse military space, how to support food production in cities. You name it. Everything that has to do with cities is something that we support in peer learning. That, and you have, I don't go through all these policies and ideas, but they have been very important to create a consciousness that cities are really the engine of cohesion in Europe. Lately, like in 2014, we had another program that was not on peer learning, but on creating ideas, innovative ideas. We heard about solutions, and supporting the solutions through direct funding. So not going through national level, province or regions and cities, but directly the European Commission, sort of through the ERDF, funding innovative practices. So it's urban innovative practices. I'm going to talk mostly about these two programs in relation to housing. So I move on just to say how many cities we touched upon. 1,377 small cities, large cities, cities like Vienna, cities like Tübingen, a very small one, and many others that have been really pushed to collaborate together. We had 197 different thematic networks. You can imagine every topic that concerns cities and may be related to housing as well has been accepted, has been welcomed. Many cities, many countries involved, including also the EPAC countries as well for this year onwards. And then we had been raising the amount of cities involved over the years. Now this last column is, just the beginning. We haven't finished the period, the working period. So as I said that, housing was not a real focus. We saw the trajectory. We started with the private neighborhoods. There has been a growing trajectory of interest on on urban policies in Europe, but URBAC was not really tackling this until, and also at the European level. We heard before from Housing Europe, it's not a European mandate, but we had many different actions, initiatives, the EPAC platform in 2022, the renovation wave. We had the EU Urban Agenda Partnership, the partnership created between cities, member states, different Directorate General of the European Commission and international organization working on housing. And when we started in 2006, also with representatives of the city of Vienna, we also repeated all the time, it's not a European mandate, but we do all work on that because it's at the core of how cities become livable. What are their roles? What municipalities can do? We heard here that regulations are important, but who decides about the regulations? It's a national level. At the European level, it's not a European mandate because it's the sovereignty of the member states. But do cities have a role? Because that's the place where we all live. And the municipalities, as the city of Vienna, are accountable for this. So in our own remit, which is the one of the program of Urban Innovative Action and URBACT, we thought, okay, let's push cities to say, how do you implement the right to housing? It's declared in the, it was the IUT member before that was mentioning that is a right within the European Union. But how do we do? So we thought, okay, we have policymakers that are working within URBACT. We have people that are investing on urban innovative action. We have researchers, but we need also activists. We haven't talked enough about activists here in the last 2 days. But we do need this force of people that are really reclaiming their governments to take care of the housing rights and to design proper regulation, proper rent control that is fitting our context and everything. So we invited, for instance, to the podcast the UN rapporteur on housing, Raquel Rodnik. There's a lot to say about financialization from all over the world. We invited representative of IUT, FEANSA, the European Federation working with homelessness, we invited Housing Europe as well, and lots of different people in different exchanges on collaborative housing, no one left behind, and fair finance. And so this is still online, old, not really alive, but it's still there. But if you want to have a look at this, there are a lot of resources. Examples. Some of the examples, I use lots of pictures here from this moment on. Within Urban, we succeeded to have a network of 10 cities that were working on homelessness. Because we thought, well, there is a great model that is housing first, that is clearly known, that is working. But how do you help city really to implement? Not all the cities have the advantages of Finland, which is national policies. So if cities want really to implement housing first, how do we do that? So we put together cities like Odense. They had a lot of experience on that. Glasgow as well, but also cities of Timisoara, they were really starting from scratch to build their own housing policies. And also you find all the information online, how they co-designed with urban methodology strategies to implement housing first in their own context. Another example is another type of network. We have network to design strategies together, but also networks that they learn from a single practice, what we call best practice, not best practice, good practice, because we all know that there are no practice that it works 100%, but they have good aspects. So this is one on social rental agency, starting from the experience of Chemnitz, on the reuse of back-end space. So you see, like, I don't read all the parts, but they have 6 steps and have been conducting 2 years exchange with the other cities, with the local groups, the local support groups of citizens, as I was saying before, really sharing these steps, how really to do it, sort of a recipe, how to get there. And at the same time, learning about their own practices, because they are not perfect. And even if they teach what they have done, they can learn back from the exchanges. And now I'm going to the other programs, the one Urban Innovative Action that has up to 5 million euros to experiment in ideas, initiatives. Even in this case, you'd not have just the urban authorities involved, but you have other associations might be involved, local association, you have the university, you have the private sector, and you have a range of different ideas that are tested locally. So one of that I've chosen is Mataró. It's a city-managed tenant cooperative. So you have a cooperative that is co-created with the municipality using European money to reuse back-end spaces in the city near Barcelona. Another case is the community land trust. I can give a lecture on any of these projects. So I'm just jumping on one or the other. This is one I've been closely working. I was fortunate to closely work with. It's a community land trust. Before, Maria was speaking about decoupling ownership of the land and the building. And this is an example that is experimented mostly in the British-speaking countries, in the UK, as well as in the United States. It has a long history of 100 years, related also to human rights movements in the US. But here, in the case of Brussels, it's a very interesting case because this started with a small experiment of creating this community land trust, which is a trust owning, leasing the land, not owning, leasing the land for a certain period of time, which is coming back. I mean, just to say this is going back to the Roman period of amphitheos, like the use of land which was common for a certain period of time. So here it's a reinterpretation of something that we knew from years ago, for centuries ago. So you have the community land trust, that has a land in the hands of a trust, and then you have co-ownership of the buildings, of the apartments that are on top. But what is interesting in this, especially in this case, that they collaborated with different associations One of them is Angela D. from Angela Davis that is working on feminist housing. And we did workshops on like the sharing of time, how the sharing of time, the care that connects to the sharing of space. And also there is another organization which is called Passage, association that is linking the special moment of life, like the birth and accompanying people to death, with solidarity in the common houses in the neighborhood. And so you have this building, which is the one that you see on the right, that entails community land trust as a non-speculative model that has a feminist housing inside. It creates a cooperative in relation to the Passage, this idea of taking care of, mutually taking care, especially in the moment of life and birth. And you have also inside 2 buildings that are managed by the district with Housing First. So super experiment in a certain way within the funding of the ERDF, European Redevelopment Fund. This is another project, something different, just because we are talking also about asylum seeker and refugees. So this is an example of reuse of hospital space in Bologna, which has been refurbished into common housing for people with migrant background, and the prices of the rent of those buildings of those apartments is a little bit low of the average market prices in Bologna. Not too much, I have to say, below the market price. But it's an interesting case because it creates its own economy, a sort of agreement between the renters and the managers, because the renters are engaged in community life, but they also take care of like local subsistence economy. There is a garden, there is a theater that is created there, there is a common restaurant. So it's creating sort of a new cultural magnet in the city, which is based on co-housing. Another example, that's also the case of Bologna. Another example, I have many, but I just picked few for our discussion today. This is another project, is the 5 Bridges project in Nantes. The idea was that the services for homeless people were scattered all over the cities, and they wanted to recollect the different services into one single place in this area of Nantes, which is under redevelopment, very central. That's the program, the 5 Bridges, that includes a solidarity store, restaurants, and obviously a place where you could stay for a temporary period of time. And again, we have this, you have always this combination of providing a housing solution with different forms of economies and integrated with the neighborhood. And that's also the restaurant areas, and also the place where you can have like different kinds of workshops. And this is up and running also with the support of the Urban Innovative Action. So my conclusion, that's one of the apartment. My conclusion is here that you hear a lot of solution finding, looking for solution, looking for innovation. Not everything that is called innovative is an innovation. So I will put with the cum grano salis this idea of innovation, because it needs to pass the test of time and needs to pass the test of the rhetoric of transferring practices. Yesterday there was Joanna from the foundation, Joanna Talevitz, the Foundation Towards Dialogue, who said something like, we need to have a regular evaluation and beneficiaries need to be involved into that. That's the case. How do we do this evaluation? How do we say that these are good practices? Maybe the case of Nantes that I just showed, it looks good, but maybe it's not, because why don't they do temporary housing and they don't work directly on Housing First? Why the case of Salo Space before has the price that is not really very, very much below the average rent it's not very affordable. So even the practices that are presented within our reports, our brochures, they're not necessarily the best ones. So time is important. It's important research. It's important to visit these places, and it's important to talk with the beneficiaries to see that we are doing very good beyond our goodwill. So that's what I just said. But that, having said that, this is a critical perspective of innovation. We still need to have experiments for responding to urgent needs, and also to create a momentum of creativity, a momentum of experimentation. Maria, from the great example of Vienna, said, well, the condition of the 2/3 of the apartments needs for 2/3 of the apartment built on the public land condition needs to be tested after 5 years. So they don't really know if this condition is really working. So it's important really to experiment and to see also face the failures of that. So we need to encourage different kinds of cooperative, limited equity, co-ownership, and CLT. And also I will say also to mix different forms of tenures. Before our speaker was saying we need to diversify the type of tenures, but how do we work? For instance, I come from Italy. There is a public social housing have been sold, and there is no money. That's the argument of restoring this public housing. So we need to mix public-owned housing with different forms of cooperatives, maybe, and to have different forms of management that can be creative and responding to specific needs. Alan from the UNHCR the other day said we could look at very good practices. We can respond to urgent needs of asylum seeker coming, but we need as well systemic change. And for systemic change, we need as well the whole society, activists, and multi-scalar and multifactorial public policies aiming at urban justice, which is to be the basic core of our initiatives. We also need institutional cooperation. The Urban Agenda Partnership was an example. The proposal of Housing Europe, of creating a stable table of discussion, it's important. Last but not least, we said that we want to have government accountable. We also need to have public commitment that is also daring. We need to support daring ideas. And I want to close with the quotation of a former mayor of the city where I happen to live right now, where I belong right now. And it's Giorgio La Pira. I was a Christian Democrat, so I would not say the most radical person in history. But he said the problem of being ruthless has aspects of serious public necessity. And so from his mandate, he decided to pick up an old law, that was existing from the 19th century, which said that requisition were possible in case of public need. Requisition meaning taking out the properties from they were unused and make them disposable of people in need. And that's what he did. So it was like a very radical position, but it was after the Second World War. He was facing a lot of people that were not very well housed. And so his daring proposal at that time was really to go beyond the expected, to talk about requisition, which is not so unexpected considering that Catalonia is looking at how expropriate houses that are unused. There are initiatives like in the island to look for vacant housing and reconsider the way of using those housing and so on. So I want just to leave with this message that is somehow encouraging all of you in this field of work to be, challenged also by daring things that we would not think of. So thank you very much.
Now it's time for closing remarks by Rick Hathaway, Vice President of Europe and the Middle East in Habitat for Humanity International.
Thank you. Thank you. And just on behalf of Habitat for Humanity, we would like to just offer some thanks to some really important people and important institutions that have brought us together. First of all, I would like to thank our sponsors, UNHCR and IOM, for their vision and for their support, financial support for this event. So let's give them special thanks for their support. Would also like to thank all our presenters, moderators, and especially you as participants. You brought incredible knowledge and content. It's amazing how much knowledge was in the room yesterday and today. If we can capture that and work together at it, it's amazing, I think, what we can do. So special hand for all of you for what you brought to this. I also want to thank, I've always tried to position myself to watch the screen over there for the live illustration. Thank you to our colleague, and we look forward to getting a copy of all that. So thank you. And lastly, I'd like to especially thank my colleagues from Habitat International, especially the communications team and Habitat Poland, both their advocacy and communications team. There are over 600 people that were either here or online. And I know the organizers are probably off taking care of your meals and transport. But those of you who are here, could you stand so we can especially recognize you, especially those in the front row here? Thank you. Don't worry, they're not done yet. We will eat today and we will get to the site visits. With my colleagues at Habitat, we've begun to talk about what have we learned here that we can take forward. And we will take those things forward with you. We will invite you to join those things. But there are also things that are part of what we do too. So I would like to just mention a few of them. And I know you've been making lists of what you're going to do in your organizations, your government, your corporations, but just to share with you some of our reflections. So we've been talking about this before this conference, but it reinforced for us the need to bring people together around Roma housing and Roma inclusion. And there's a lot of groups working on that. So we're going to form a community of practice for the sector so that we can continue that. Things I'm mentioning, if you find they're already happening, please let us know, because we're not wanting to duplicate. We're wanting to add value to the sector. The second is, and we're relatively new with our work in Ukraine. Many of you have much more experience, and it was such a blessing to have people here from Ukraine and that work in Ukraine. But we have a special interest in helping municipalities to further their housing agenda. This service is offered. I met with a few mayors in Ukraine, and they're so focused on the immediate, but they have great ideas for housing long-term. And so we want to pull together a working group to continue that conversation with people in Ukraine and those of you who are dedicated to Ukraine. We will continue our work on the social rental agency. We know the scale is small, but it has begun to influence funding and others. And we'll continue that journey with our network, especially here in Habitat Poland. We look forward to continuing to connect you to all of that. And then the last one, and there's a longer list, but I won't go through the whole list. But the last one was that roundtable was incredibly rich. And Adam, you brought a lot of magic to that, so thank you for that. We appreciate that. But so many ideas, and that was just the beginning. There could be a whole week of a conference on all those ideas, but there was a lot of richness there that we need to capture. So we're going to produce a white paper based on that roundtable, with the ideas that were developed as a resource for all of us that are in the sector. And so we look forward to putting that together. I don't think we'll be able to do it next week, but we will pull that together as a resource so we can continue to capture and grow the richness of what came through that. I did want to just close with, I was trained as a mechanical engineer, and I studied a lot of chemistry and physics. Not that I really liked it, but I studied a lot of chemistry and physics. But one of my heroes was born in this city, and that's Madame Curie, Maria Skłodowska-Curie. She was born in 1867 in Warsaw, and an amazing woman, an amazing leader, an amazing innovator. And she talked a lot about her gifts, not about her gifts, but the gifts she was given and the gifts that other people have. She was the first woman to win the Nobel Prize. She's the only first person to win it twice, both in chemistry and physics. In my understanding, nobody has ever won it in both of those disciplines. With her daughter, who was also a Nobel winner, she developed the mobile X-ray units that saved many soldiers during World War I, saved them having limbs amputated, and she did that on the front line. And this is where I would have memorized the periodic table because we had to do that. She has two elements in that table, polonium, which is named after her home country, and radium, and all that led to. But one of her quotes that I wanted to end my remarks here was about giftedness and a responsibility we have to use that giftedness. The words of Maria Sklodowska-Curie. Life is not easy for any of us. We must have perseverance and, above all, confidence in ourselves. We must believe that we are gifted for something, and that something must be attained. We're all gifted in the housing field, and we know we can attain that so that everybody has a decent, affordable, and safe place to live. So thank you for all that you brought to this conference, but don't leave yet. We have instructions for you on the site visits, and I'll turn it back over to Machin. Thanks.
As Rick already told you, so there is no suspense. The lunch is coming, but before we do that, I know that a lot of you registered for the field trips, and we would like to make it as organized as possible, and some of you have some doubts. If you registered, in the back of the room, you have our staff standing with names of the field trip. They are just waving their hands to you right now. So if you have doubts, you can go there, confirm that your registration went fine, and then you are clear to go. What is going to happen after I'll stop talking? We'll go to lunch, and after lunch, we will meet in this room, in the very back of it, and together we will go to the buses. We have to do it organized way, but we also have to do it on time, as it's not just us going on those field trips. We are also talking about people on the other side of the organization who are waiting for us. So that's why, please, I know that there is limited time. I know that the lunch is great, but make sure that you are on time, in correct place, so we can all move together. Also, I would like to ask you, those of you who used headphones, to give them back. If you taken them yesterday, remember to give them back today. And the lunch is going to be at the same place as yesterday. Thank you very much, and have a great lunch. And talking about headphones, I have one pair of somebody's headphones, so please collect them.